Good morning, you're watching Daybreak on Bloomberg Quint Live and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines this morning. The rain intensity finally drops in Kerala even as rescue operations continue, with more than 7 lakh people displaced and 370 declared dead. Asian markets are off to a muted start. Investors await cues from corporate earnings and the Jackson Hole Symposium later this week. Infosys CFO MD Ranganath has resigned from his post over the weekend, citing his wish to pursue professional opportunities in new areas. A consortium of PE firms, along with billionaire investor Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, will buy Star Health Insurance. Sources tell Bloomberg Quint that the deal is valued between 6,300 and 6,500 crore rupees. And 24-year-old wrestler Bajrang Punia has won India's first gold medal in the 18th Asian Games being held in Jakarta. Let's take a look at where the US stocks ended on Friday. They snuck into a positive territory in the last trading session of the week, with the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average extending gains and the Nasdaq turning positive on reports of progress in tariff disputes between the United States and its trading partners China and Mexico. Additionally, Mexico's economy minister said he hopes to wrap up the outstanding bilateral issues on the North American Free Trade Agreement by the middle of the week. Global financial markets, remember, endured a bout of volatility last week as emerging market stocks fell into a bear market, triggered primarily by concerns over Turkey and China. Turkey's credit rating, by the way, was cut further into junk on Friday by S&P Global Ratings and Moody's Investor Services, which said that the volatile lira and wide current accounts deficit may undermine the country's economy. All right, let's take a look at where India is likely to trade at the start of the week and what the cues are going into trade today, and also what's happening in the futures and options space. To talk about all of that, I'm joined by Darshan Mehta. Good morning, Darshan. What are you reading this morning?
Good morning, Alex. The cues are positive. Globally, indices did well. SGX Nifty is positive. ADRs are positive. So it seems that we will have a positive start. We'll open at record highs about the 11,500 mark in trade. Now, we are trading at about the 11,500 mark in trade as far as the SGX Nifty is concerned. So that's a positive cue that we're seeing at this point of time. The ADRs also ended with a positive bias. Vedanta was up 4%. Tata Motors was up 3%. ICICI, Dr. Reddy's, all of them reacted positively in trade. So you can see even the worst performers actually moved up close to 0.5% in trade. So cues are positive as far as the ADRs are concerned. Now, how did the indices pan out in trade? The Nifty coming out at record highs. It didn't close at record highs, pretty much at that level. The Nifty up almost 0.7%. The mid cap and small cap also moving in much higher this time around. As far as the PSU banking and banking sector is concerned, the traction definitely continues. The Nifty PSU banking index up almost 3% in trade. Which were the sectors that did well in trade? The metal sector did well. It was up almost 1.7%, and the FMCG index, led by Britannia doing extremely well, Nestle doing well, was up almost 1.9%. ITC too contributed. How has last week panned out in trade? The pharma index has done extremely well. It's up 6%. IT is up 3%, and the FMCG index is up almost 3% in trade. So strong traction coming in. The high beta again continued to be under pressure. Metal was down over 1%. Infra and media also down anywhere between 1.5% to 2% in trade. Fund flows, both FIs and DIs were net buyers in the market. They bought in close to 150 crores on Friday. As far as the other cues are concerned, how did the contribution pan out in trade? The Nifty was up 85 points. Majority of it came in on account of ITC, ICICI Bank and SBI. HUL2 contributed on the positive side. Not many counters on the losing side. HDFC, Maruti Suzuki, GAIL and Hero MotoCorp, marginal declines coming in, but it's basically some of the banks and the FMCG names that did well on Friday. Now, as far as the ADR, as far as the F&O picture is concerned, fresh buying was seen on the Nifty. Open interest build-up was almost 3% on the Nifty. On the Nifty Bank, also similar open interest build-up of 3% on the long side. Now, as how are the fund? How is the F&O dispersion like at this point? Distribution like? Put writers are very active at 11,400, 11,500, and since the market moved up significantly, 11,400 11,200 and 11,500. Call writers which were anticipating that the markets will fall, they were forced to shed positions in open interest given the fact that markets moved up. A little bit of call writing happening on the 11,600 mark in trade. How is the total open interest build up seen? Again, there is significant amount of writing at 11,500 and 11,600. Probably you might see a little bit of unwinding today here at the 11,500 mark since the market will move up. But no doubt, the bulls have it at this point of time because the red lines are clearly much more stronger than what the traction that you've seen on the green lines. Now, as far as the stocks in the F&O band are concerned, the Adani twins continue. Jet Airways continues to be in the F&O band. So these counters are there. The new one that comes in is Raymond, which is up almost 3% in trade on Friday. How is the PCR panning out? The Nifty PCR moved to 1.66. Let's move at what's as the Bank Nifty PCR. That's also moved up to 1.38, above the 1 level mark after a while. So we are seeing traction there. Couple of stocks I want to highlight. Yes Bank, open interest build up of 2% on the long side. Stock trading at record highs. Lupin saw short covering. Open interest was down 4% on the counter. The counter was up almost 4% in trade. SBI has recovered some of the losses that we've seen over the past few days. Open interest build up of say 0.5%. The counter managed to move up. Apollo Hospitals continues to see traction on high open interest build up of almost 10% in trade. And the final stock is Grasim, open interest build up of 5%, that too on the long side.
All right, thanks so much for that, Darshan. Now, well, that's how India looks, and that's the cues going to trade in India. But to get a broader perspective and to find out what is happening in Asia, I'm joined now live by Bloomberg's David English from Hong Kong. Good morning, David. Just trying to figure out from you, hopefully, from what you're reading, which way the wind's blowing this Monday.
Well, I'm also trying to figure that out. Frankly, I don't have a clear answer for you. I was just listening, of course, to the previous segment you guys did, and it does seem, and you guys were going through several changes, of course, in positioning in the options market, and certainly where I guess a lot of people have been playing right now. They have been adjusting strike prices, that sort of thing, because there's not a lot of action in the cash market as we speak. The spot market, you look at the currency markets right now, flat, very range bound. The equity market, with the exception of New Zealand, which is up 0.4%. We're not really seeing a lot of movement as well across the Asia Pacific. On balance, we're a little bit lower here on the benchmark. Volumes are quite light as well. So there's also not a lot on the data deck, with the exception of Thai GDP, which comes out in about 15 minutes from now. As far as the catalyst, that might, of course, move the needle in Thailand when that market opens up. But there's just a lack of things to trade on today, frankly. There's no eco data, I just mentioned that. Earnings, it gets busier towards the end of this week. That's also the time, of course, we'll start talking about Jackson Hole. So earnings here in Hong Kong, 4 or 5 names really, more than anything else. Now, that being said, though, it does feel like there's a lack of bad news, which I guess is a good thing, but there's also not a lot of good news right here to drive these markets higher. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time, of course, and your producers might thank me for this. I'll toss it back to you because, frankly, there's not a lot happening at this point in time.
All right, David. Well, that makes a lot of sense going into trade for us as well. Thanks so much for joining us there. Remember last week there were updates coming out from Bloomberg and from various other publications that there were going to be low-level meetings between representatives of the US and China to discuss the kind of disputes that have emerged over the past few weeks and months on trade. And, well, there was a lot of positivity and hope that something would emerge from those meetings. What exactly is going to be discussed and what's on the agenda, and what will that or could that culminate in? Here's Ross Krasny, who has this report.
I think the word around Washington is that nothing major will be announced this week, but it's seen as extremely positive that the Chinese delegation led by Wang Shuwen is really coming to Washington. It's the first high-level trade talks between the U.S. and Beijing for about 2 months. It seems like it's been a very long time. And it comes at a crucial time, as you say. The second round of tariffs from the U.S. are due to kick in this week. And beyond that, there's much bigger tariffs looming. So I think both sides really see this as a time maybe to pull back from the brink, really take a deep breath and start working on something that might ultimately end up with some kind of a major announcement later in the year from President Trump and President Xi.
Yeah, and on those tariffs there, the administration, of course, is going to be going through a lot of data, a lot of feedback by several days of testimony from companies as well as groups pushing back against those. Is there any insight as to whether they might actually listen?
Well, I mean, this is the third time that a lot of company executives and business group officials have come to Washington to speak to the Commerce Department. Mm-hmm. There's 6 days of testimony coming up starting tomorrow and going all the way into next week. It's unclear if that really gets through to the administration, but they have made extra time to hear these officials. And once again, I think they know that with $200 billion in tariffs, possibly looming in early September, that this is really the time to listen. And, if you feel like the Trump administration has targeted the tariffs to be the least damaging in the first instance, by the time you get to the third round and you get to $200 billion, the pain is really spread far more widely. So it may be that the people speaking this week get a closer hearing.
All right. Well, that's a perspective on the international updates that we have for you. But let's turn to India and also take a check on the rupee and the bond market. Saloni Dhanuka is here with all the updates there. Saloni, well, it didn't trade on Friday. The rupee closed at 70.15, above that crucial 70 mark. What are we looking at this week?
So, Alex, last week the rupee weakened to new low, as you rightly mentioned, of 70.16 levels against the dollar. Now, this was on the back of strong dollar demand that we have seen from importers last week, and also on the back of growing concerns of widening trade deficit data that came late evening on Tuesday. Remember, the home unit has touched an all-time intraday low of 70.40 levels on Thursday before closing well above the 70 mark. For the week, if you see, the rupee has depreciated almost 2% against the greenback, thereby marking its second weekly drop. That apart, India's foreign exchange reserves has dropped to $400 billion. If you see from their peak of April, that was $425 billion. Foreign exchange reserves have dropped almost $25 billion since 13th April. Speaking of the bond market, sovereign bonds too dropped on Thursday as 10-year benchmark bond yields rose after declining for 6 straight weeks. Yields ended 11 basis points higher for the week to 7.86%. On the global front, dollar index ended lower for the third straight session on Friday. However, it now trades steady well above the 96.1 mark. Dollar index is weighed on the back of reports that a potential progress of US trade talks between Mexico and China. That apart, euro gained for third straight session on Friday. It ended 0.5% higher versus the greenback. Well, pound rose 0.3% against the dollar on Friday. However, for the week, it was down for the 6th straight week. And lastly, speaking of dollar rupee, now it is trading higher at 69.87 levels in the non-deliverable forward markets, which indicates a positive opening for Indian rupee in today's trade, Alex.
All right, thanks so much for that, Saloni. Moving on to an update now from Syria. The Russian and United States administrations both agree in principle that Iran should take its forces out of Syria. But the Russian government believes that it will be a difficult task to get the Iranians out of the country. This, according to a senior US official. All right. Well, it looks like we have Somit Sarkar, who's joining us with the All right. In the meanwhile, let's take a check on where the Asian markets are heading this morning. We got an initial check from David from Hong Kong earlier. You have the Shanghai and you have the Chinese benchmarks essentially that have opened positive. And you also have the Hang Seng that's trading positive at the moment. You have the Kospi, of course, that had started the day positive. Only negative pocket there is the Nikkei that has cuts of about 0.5% in early trade. All right, looks like Somit Sarkar is here with us with the big brokerage calls of the day. Somit, what are you picking up today?
Good morning, Alex. On the big brokerage calls for the day, first we have is Bank of America Merrill Lynch on Dalmia Bharat. Now, the brokerage has initiated coverage on the stock with a buy rating and a target price of 3,335. Now, according to the brokerage, with rising exposure to East India and market leadership by financial year 2021, Dalmia Bharat is best placed to gain from Housing for All scheme of the government. Now, the company's unit EBITDA is higher than peers, which should sustain going forward, according to the brokerage, on the back of power, fuel and logistics cost control. Along with this, rise in share of premium brands, composite cement and ramp up of acquired distress assets at below replacement cost would improve the margins of the company going forward. Now, summing up all these positives would result into a 36% annualized growth in the EPS over FY18 to FY21 and a 710 basis points rise in the return on equity over the same period, says the brokerage. Lastly, the ongoing litigation related to the Binani cement acquisition is the only overhang on the stock, according to the brokerage. Second, we have is ICICI Direct on Elgai Equipments. Now, the brokerage has initiated coverage on the stock with a buy rating and a target price of 350. Now, according to the brokerage, the company is an aspiring market leader in the compressor market with solid fundamentals. Now, demand for air compressor is generally dependent on the overall industry activity, and an uptick in the industrial activity is expected to lead the India business for this company. Now, along with this, sustained turnaround in its foreign subsidiaries would drive the next leg of profitable growth for the company, says the brokerage. Lastly, on the back of these positives, the brokerage is expecting the company's revenue, EBITDA and net profit to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 18%, 22% and 29% over FY18 to FY20.
All right, thanks so much for that, Somit. Well, Shraddha Babla joins us now with the stocks in news. Shraddha, what are the stocks on your list today? Good morning.
Good morning, Alex. I'm going to start off with L&T, which will consider a share buyback on 23rd August. So watch out for that name. As also Reliance, and this is on the back of a ET report which says that Alibaba is said to have held talks with Reliance on a JV for India. So that's a stock to watch out for. You also have a ET report which says that Atlantia, CDPQ and Cube Highways are vying to acquire a chunk of Sadbhav Infra. The companies are said to be in talks to individually acquire about 35 to 40% in Sadbhav Infra project, and that deal is said to be worth about 2,500 to 2,800 crores. So watch out for Sadbhav Infra, which is listed, and also Sadbhav Engineering, which holds about 69% in Sadbhav Infra. Prison Johnson is another stock that we are watching out for. They've been awarded LOIs for 5 captive solar power projects via SPVs, and the aggregate capacity is about 22 megawatts, and the projects are likely to be commissioned in about 6 to 8 months. Also watch out for NBCC and Hutco on the back of divestment plans. You have Financial Express, which says that government could sell 10% in these two companies via the OFS route. You have another ET report which says that Chris Capital is in talks to buy a minority stake in eye care chain Dr. Agarwal's Healthcare, and the funds that they raise will be used to expand the eye care chain run by the listed entity, which is Dr. Agarwal's Eye Hospital, which will be in focus. Small company, very low volumes, but watch out for that one. And finally, we have Hudson Agro, where promoter Chandra Morgan RG has acquired 0.66% in a bulk deal. So those are some of the names to watch out for, Alex.
Thanks so much for that, Shraddha. Now, exactly a year after former Infosys CEO Vishal Sikka left the company after bruising public spat with the promoters, the company's CFO, MD Ranganath, has abruptly resigned. This is the first major exit under the current CEO, Salil Parekh, and one that has caught everybody by surprise. Take a look. Well, there's clearly lots to talk about this Monday morning, and you'll find all the live market action right here on Bloomberg Quint Live. There are also several stories on the website that you'll find currently if you log on. That's bloombergquint.com, so do check it out. First up, the Narendra Modi government has clarified that the GDP back series data with 2011-12 as the base year are not official estimates, as the calculations are still a work in progress. The methodology for backcasting GDP series has not yet been finalized, and various alternative methods are being explored, it said in a statement. This comes at a time when the Congress is using this data to defend its management of the Indian economy during the tenure of the UPA at the centre. The UIDAI has announced a phased rollout of facial recognition feature as an additional mode of authentication, starting with telecom service providers from the 15th of September. Now, the Indian contingent opened their account on the inaugural day of the Asian Games in Jakarta. Indian shooters Apurvi Chandela and Ravi Kumar bagged bronze in the 10-meter air rifle mixed team event. India's first goal was won by 24-year-old wrestler Bajrang Punia in the 65 kg category of the men's freestyle event. However, twin Olympic medalist wrestler Sushil Kumar was knocked out in the first round of the 75 kg category. Other medal prospects, including 16-year-old Manu Bhaker, too failed to make it to the knockout stages of her pistol shooting event. Now, oil prices have been on the decline for the past few days. In fact, it looks all set to post the longest drop in 3 years. So are there any clear factors that could push prices higher? Alan Nookman of Agora Financial lists them out.
Well, looking at the oil market, it has declined. We have not seen a $70 day for the whole month of August. So that is interesting in itself, that it's been essentially a straight down move with lower highs and lower lows each and every couple of sessions here. So what we've seen here this week is a dip. We're down about $1.50 for the week, but I would attribute a lot of this to the dollar. We just made some new one-year highs in the dollar, but let's pay attention here, because we are, depending on how we finish today, in position for a new high with a lower weekly close, which could be the start of a dollar stall that would help out all commodity markets.
So at this point, do you see any bullish catalyst for oil?
Well, there's always potential bull catalysts, and there's always price shock potential is always in the cards for oil. Anything that happens around the world, any disruption, any geopolitical issues. So there's always potential there. We've essentially come back to the breakout. We broke out at 63 a couple months ago. Now we've come back to that. Let's see if that level holds. 66 had been an interesting point here in the last few sessions, and we're not that far away from it. So I think technically we're getting a little bit oversold. We want to see how the markets react on a bounce, but you alluded to China. I think the news this morning was the fact that the U.S. is going to discuss sanctions against China if they buy oil from Iran. So it's more symbolic than anything else. Iran's oil goes to China, South Korea, and to India, and it doesn't have any impact here. But I think these kind of things are the issues that can put in a little bit of risk premium back in an oil market that's had that subtracted for right now. Pay attention to the macro market. You've seen the stock market have a big reversal and bounce here yesterday, and we're actually positive on the week. So if we can make some new highs in the S&P, we're very close to doing that once again. That could be a positive tone for global growth and for the oil market.
But Alan, how do you account for the recent increase in stockpiles that we've seen here in the U.S. and what that's going to do to the sentiment in the market surrounding oil?
Well, it had been pretty much a straight down move in that oil inventory. So we've been, drawdown. So we've seen a bit of firmness here recently. There are issues in America. Yes, we continue to produce more, but as far as the, getting it out of distribution, that can be a bottleneck issue sometimes. Also, we're seeing, and I don't think we talk about this often enough, you saw that the numbers were raised for global demand. That's going to be, I think, the issue that we don't talk about enough because of global growth and for expanding economies. Yes, emerging markets had a tough time in their currencies here in the last couple of days, but I'm looking at that being a short-term phenomenon, and I don't think there's any major overhang with this Turkey situation.
All right, Alan, real quickly, can you talk to me a little bit about metals? Because, I mean, we've had really an awful week here, particularly with a lot of the industrial and base metals.
Yeah, it's been an awful month. It's been an awful year. And again, it's very much correlated to the dollar. There's much more of a correlation to the dollar being up and the metals being straight down than we've seen in crude oil. Crude oil has some internals that have some signs of strength, whereas the metals are straight down. At some point, they're going to offer some value. But for right now, there's been just a direct correlation. Until the dollar stops going up, you're going to see the metals continue to decline. So I think if you can look 6 months, 9 months, a year out, I think that particular sector may have some value in it. If you can look at the XME, the ETF that tracks the metal and miners markets, I think it's very overdone, and I think that particular sector could make a comeback as time goes on, as the dollar stops going higher.
All right, we're all set more or less for the market open today. But just before we go, we've kept you posted over the past week or so of the turmoil and the chaos that has been experienced in Kerala. The death toll, in fact, in the Kerala floods rose to 370 on Sunday. Pinarayi Vijayan, the chief minister there, said that there were over 1,500 relief camps sheltering nearly 7.25 lakh displaced people. Now, to find out how you can help, watch this special report. Now, a lot of you have already contributed, and for that, on behalf of the entire team here at Bloomberg Quint, we thank you. That's all we have for you in this edition of Daybreak. All you need to know is up next, so do stay tuned.